COVID-19 has caused many issues throughout the world, starting with the pandemic lockdown, which caused chaos to occur, from stocking up on toilet paper to losing millions of jobs and businesses. Regulations have been set in place to prevent the spread of COVID-19, such as social distancing, leaving the house for essential items, requiring masks to be worn when leaving home, and more. It has affected thousands of students from switching to online classes. Transitioning from in-person to online can be difficult as it can decrease motivation and increase procrastination. I have experienced this firsthand, from waking up and walking to class and being fully prepared and ready for the day to waking up 5 minutes before a Zoom meeting. This change from in-person to online class has caused me to procrastinate more and affect my overall mood towards my academic performance. It's important to know what mental health is. Mental health is defined as a person's condition with regard to their psychological and emotional well-being. Some mental health diagnoses can include anxiety, stress, and depression. I have also provided common symptoms of mental illnesses. So, not eating enough or overeating, insomnia or too much sleep, distancing yourself from others and favorite activities, feeling fatigued even with enough sleep, substance use, feeling hopeless, helpless, or lost, feelings of irritability, anxiety, anger, sadness, or fright, and constant thoughts or flashbacks you can't get out of your head. With COVID-19 restrictions, there is sure to be a rise in these symptoms. For instance, distancing yourself from others in favorite activities can relate to social distancing and the lockdown we had in March. Feelings of hopelessness, sadness, anger, irritability, or anxiety can be associated to job loss, the COVID-19 regulations, afraid for loved ones, and more. So, how does this affect students? It can affect motivation, concentration, and social interactions, all of which are crucial factors for a student to succeed. The rise of COVID-19 has caused mental illness symptoms to increase in students. This can deal with students with current mental health diagnoses and those who have presented no symptoms before. Symptoms have escalated from constantly being home, constraints on physical and social activities, sudden lifestyle changes, being afraid for loved ones and friends, loss of work, online education, and many other factors. Statistics of increased mental health symptoms in students. Sun et al. Conducted a survey of 195 participants. For stress and anxiety, they utilized PSS, or Perceived Stress Scale, to determine how their stress and anxiety has been in the past month. If their stress levels had increased, they were asked about their stress coping strategies and use of available mental health counseling services. This will be discussed in a later slide. With stress and anxiety, 71% of participants had increased stress and anxiety due to COVID-19. 20% of participants indicated the same, and 9% of participants stated stress and anxiety actually decreased. 91% of participants presumed that other students were experiencing similar stress and anxiety due to COVID-19 as well. Continuing on with Sun et al.'s survey of 195 participants, I have provided a graph from their research article showing the different factors they focused on for their participants and whether those factors had no effect, a mild effect, a moderate effect, or a severe effect from their mental health. For concerns on health, 91% of participants indicated that COVID-19 increased the level of fear and worry about their own health and the health of their loved ones who were more vulnerable, such as older adults, those who have existing health problems, those who are pregnant or gave birth recently, and afraid of contracting the virus. For difficulty in concentrating, 89% of participants found it difficult to concentrate on academic work due to a distractive environment at home, lack of accountability from social media, internet, and video games, interruptions from family members, their home being a place to relax and a place to study, as well as lack of social interactions and prolonged attention to the computer screen. For disruption in sleep patterns, 86% of participants had inconsistent times of going to bed and to wake up from day to day, as well as tending to stay up later than they did prior to the COVID-19 outbreak. 7% reported increased hours of sleep, and 6% reported poor sleep quality. For increased social isolation, 86% of participants reported significant decreases in social interactions, with some worrying about the lack of social interactions such as face-to-face meetings. For concerns on academic performance, 82% of participants found it most difficult transitioning to online classes, such as changes in the syllabus, the quality of their classes, technical issues with online applications, and difficulty learning online. Few participants were concerned about their grades under this environment and reduced motivation to learn and tendency to procrastinate. For disruptions in eating patterns, 70% of participants indicated a disruption in eating patterns, with 26% reporting an increase in the amount of eating, 20% having inconsistent eating patterns such as skipping meals or irregular times of eating, 12% having decreased appetite, and 5% eating when bored. However, there has been a positive effect of COVID-19. 14% reported to have a healthier diet by cooking meals and not eating out as much as before. 67% of participants reported changes in their living environment. A large portion reported living with family members made them less independent and a more distracting environment. 14% of those living on or off campus reported decreased social interactions with their roommates. As for financial difficulties, 59% of participants expressed concerns of financial situations. 38% of participants stated that it would likely affect their current or future employment, and a few others revealed financial situations of mainly their parents getting laid off or receiving pay cuts. For increased workload, it's important to note that the class workload was not conclusive. However, 54% of participants indicated an increase in workload. However, 36% stated workload remained the same, and 10% stated a decrease in workload. For those who were experiencing increased workloads, nearly half thought they needed to increase their own efforts to catch up with online classes and class projects given the lack of in-person support from instructors or teaching assistants. About 1/3 of the participants perceived that assignments had increased or became harder to do. For depressive thoughts, 44% of participants reported depressive thoughts, with a major factor being loneliness. Other factors included insecurity or uncertainty, powerlessness and hopelessness, concerns of academic performance, and overthinking. For suicidal thoughts, 8% of participants have indicated suicidal thoughts, with 5% being moderate and 3% being severe. 6 of the 16 participants have related their suicidal thoughts to their depressive thoughts, and 1 was related to academic performance and 1 from fear from insecurity and uncertainty. I would also like to include for difficulty in concentrating, disruptions in sleep patterns, and changes in living environment can also be due to an abusive family. It's important to note that although this study did not have participants with an abusive home, it does happen and can be a reason for students moving to the university itself than living at home, so they can remove themselves from that situation completely. Living back at home during COVID-19 and taking online classes in an abusive environment can be really difficult to handle, all while maintaining an education. Coping mechanisms. Out of the 195 participants, 138 participants of Sun et al. Study reported increases in stress and anxiety levels. For self-management, 105 or 76% of participants utilized various means to help themselves cope with stress and anxiety from the pandemic. Out of the 105 participants using self-management, 23% used negative coping methods such as ignoring the news about COVID-19, sleeping longer, distracting themselves by doing other tasks, and substance use. For those seeking support from others, 34% reported that communicating with friends and family was the primary way to deal with stress and anxiety during COVID-19. For mental health and counseling service, only 5% of participants utilized this. 93% of participants stated they have not used school counseling services. The low percentages of not utilizing school counseling services could be from participants not seeing their condition as severe enough to receive help, not comfortable talking about personal life with an unfamiliar person, lack of trust in counseling services, and stigma surrounding therapy. So, what students are affected the most from COVID-19? In a study done by Shirokov et al., they surveyed 30,725 undergraduate and graduate students. Major depressive disorder and generalized anxiety disorder rates are more pronounced among undergraduates, low-income students, students of color, women and non-binary students, transgender students, gay or lesbian, bisexual, queer, questioning, asexual, and pansexual students, and lastly, caregivers of children or older adults. This slide and the next are the graphs provided in the research article of which students are affected the most from COVID-19. If you would like to look at these, you are more than welcome to. Continuing on with Shirokov et al.'s study, mental health diagnosis is increasing in students. Shirokov et al. States that the prevalence of major depressive disorder is 2 times higher in 2020 compared to 2019, and generalized anxiety disorder is 1.5 times higher in 2020 compared to 2019. Mental health and schooling at Purdue. The monthly statistics for present year at Purdue has fortunately had 0 suicides for July through June of 2020 and October 2020. However, there has been 7 suicide attempts in July through June 2020 and 3 suicide attempts in October 2020. Originally, there were 3 suicides noted for July through October 2020 stated in the monthly statistics, which sparked an uproar in students. PUPD falsely reported this and quickly changed it to 0 suicides and stated 1 student has died since July, and that the PUPD report is generated from information received in calls to police dispatch, not the eventual outcomes of the call. Continuing on with the previous slide, prior to the false information being changed, in November of 2020, more than a dozen students gathered accusing the university of ignoring their cries for help and guidance during a difficult year. They then created a list of student demands. Demand academic support for the student body, including but not limited to enabling pass or no pass with the same standards as the spring and allowing students to choose an all-online option for spring 2021, which they actually did. Demand higher accountability for the professors, including but not limited to grading in a timely manner, providing leniency for deadlines, respecting reading days by giving no assignments, labs, or quizzes, and being cognizant of the world's current condition, adjusting student workloads accordingly. Demand improvements to the way in which mental health is handled, including but not limited to ensuring everyone receives help even if CAP says they're too severe or not severe enough, making CAPs more accessible to everyone, and preventing PUPD from dealing with mental health crises, especially in uniform. Demand accountability for Purdue's reporting systems and statistics, including but not limited to taking all incident reports with the utmost seriousness, investigating them properly, and handing out the correct punitive measures. And lastly, demand increased in transparency from Purdue University, including but not limited to accurately reporting and publicly acknowledging current, future, and previously neglected incidents involving the Purdue community members, regardless if it happened on campus. Even with the false suicide reporting, I personally agree with these lists of demands. COVID-19 has caused mental health issues to increase significantly in college students, where I don't doubt a moderate percentage of Purdue students experiencing the same thing. Teachers need to understand that online learning is an entirely new environment, and I have personally received my share of confusion when trying to navigate through class assignments, difficult communication with professors, and not receiving a day off when it's a reading day. I also believe that CAP should be open to anyone requiring assistance, regardless of being too severe and not severe enough. Mental health is an important topic and should be recognized as such. Conclusion. With the research I have completed and the amount of attempted suicides at Purdue since COVID-19, online schooling has negatively impacted student mental health since the start of the pandemic. This has been seen as such by the student gathering and statement that Purdue is not helping the students enough. Overall, stress, anxiety, depression, difficulty concentrating, disruptions in sleeping and eating patterns, lack of social interaction, changes in living environment, and several other factors have been a proven effect of COVID-19 on college students.